This is always one of my favorite nights of the year. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Speedway Lions Club for annually hosting this event. I truly cannot overstate what the Lions do for Speedway and for Speedway schools. Any Lions here, please stand. Thank you so much. I would also like to welcome and thank the members of the Speedway School Board. Please rise when I call your name. Mr. William Hardig, Mr. Luke Bickle, Mrs. Laura DeGay. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. Tom Smith. Sorry. We truly appreciate the guidance and support that you provide to our school district. I'd also like to thank Dr. Kyle Trebley and John Disney, our superintendent and assistant superintendents, and Andrea McIntosh, our director of programs. From the high school, thank you to the members of the administrative team, Mr. Day and Mr. Borum, to our counselor, Mr. Chuck Bennett. And lastly, for organizing this event, please give a round of applause and a very special thank you to Counselor Misty Davenport. Recently, in a discussion with Mr. Day, one of us commented on the image public education often gets in the media and the enormity of the duty that public schools are tasked with. Schools are a mirror of their communities. You can certainly see that in our top 10 group with us here tonight. We have students born and raised right here in central Indiana, students from both coasts of this country, both coasts of Africa, and from the other side of the world. This is a reflection of our Speedway community. But schools are also meant to be a rudder, providing direction and purpose to students and communities. Parents and families here, thank you for being amazing first teachers to these students, and thank you for sending them to us each day. Speedway High School has a faculty full of great teachers, and while they can't all be recognized here tonight, the 10 present are deserving of every honor and every thank you that they receive. They've provided guidance and leadership to steer these students, our school, and this community in the right direction. They are exceptional, and I really appreciate these students selecting them and taking the time to express their thoughts and experiences with us. At this time, we'll begin our presentation. Our first student is Sir Lur, who is recognizing Mrs. Whitney Baker.
My mentor and coach. Teachers always come and go. However, there are a select few that have an impact on your life and who you are as a person. There are ones that push you to do better and believe in your growth. There are ones that are kind and helpful. I believe that every Speedway teacher I've met has those qualities. So for that, I'd like to thank the teachers and administrators here tonight who have made a difference in someone's life. When I was asked who my most influential teacher was, a few came to mind, and ultimately it came down to who has shaped me the most throughout my high school years. And that person for me is my 9th grade AP World History teacher and my tennis coach of almost 4 years, Mrs. Baker. For many seniors in the high school, their first introduction to an AP class was with Mrs. Baker during our freshman year. I don't think Mrs. Baker receives enough recognition for preparing a group of clueless freshman students for their first college-level class. Although it was quite a jump from middle school, I never felt I wasn't up to the task, since her teaching style was very engaging. She never failed to make a joke, even though we didn't always get her millennial humor and references. I don't recall a single day when I was bored in class, since she was always so energetic, and her passion for history was very contagious. I remember the day before we took the exam, she wished us the best and told us that the score we got didn't define us in our efforts because she was proud of us either way. I'm glad I had Mrs. Baker my freshman year, or I wouldn't have been as confident in taking more advanced classes. Now when some of us seniors reminisce about AP World History, we recall the Silk Road, the Mongols, and perhaps even champa rice, but I hope we'll never forget Mrs. Baker's efforts and dedication to her students. I had never played tennis before my first year on the team, but I decided to give it a shot because I'd heard from former tennis players about what an amazing coach she was and how lucky they were to have had her. Her approach to teaching is very similar to her coaching. She creates a welcoming environment for new players, and despite the many that show up each year, Mrs. Baker never makes any cuts because she wants to give everyone the opportunity to learn and grow. I'm glad she believed in me and my growth despite the many times I've swung and missed or the home runs I've hit in tennis. I admire her patience and her positive outlook for every one of her players. I played a few sports throughout my time in Speedway, but tennis will always be the one I will continue to play down the line, and I'm grateful to Mrs. Baker for being the great coach that she is, who fueled my love for the sport, not only for me, but for the many others who have stuck around from my freshman year until now. One of my greatest struggles throughout my high school career was dealing with my perfectionism. Whether it was working on an assignment for school or a personal art project, I always stressed little things. I felt incredibly disappointed in myself if I turned in work that I didn't deem perfect. I was always quick to abandon my artwork halfway through because I could only see the tiniest flaws. But something I learned from Mrs. Baker was that you can't always expect to play perfect tennis. It was a statement said in the moment, but for me that meant that I shouldn't be bogged down by my mistakes, but rather look at the bigger picture. Often during my tennis matches with my doubles partner, Isabel, Mrs. Baker would lighten our moods when we were frustrated with ourselves, but she also knew when she needed to be sterner with us and encourage us to push ourselves out of our negative thoughts, reminding us to go back to the basics and not overthink. Because of Mrs. Baker, I've learned to be more self-assured in my abilities, whether it be in school or on the tennis courts. After 13 years spent at Speedway and 4 of those years spent with Mrs. Baker, I'm grateful for the lessons and experiences I've gained, whether that was my time spent as her world history student or as a player on her tennis team. Mrs. Baker, you have made a powerful impact in my life, and you will always be a teacher I will remember.
I am incredibly honored to be here tonight. Obviously, Sure is an amazing student to be nominated by, but also a lot of times freshman teachers are, the first ones they see and the last ones they typically remember because they get so many great teachers after that. So teaching freshmen and people thinking back positively on your rigorous class is always very special to me, but you all need to understand how special this student is next to me. From her freshman year, her artistic skills are next level. I show them off still. Every year I show off her skills, and her hard work and her dedication and her genuine just let's get down and let's do it, let's push through. She is just amazing, and that transports over to the tennis court as well. She gave me the okay to say this. She is my backhand baller. That's my nickname for her. For those of you who don't know, a backhand is a tennis stroke, and she has the prettiest strokes I've ever seen on my tennis court. And she has grown so much, and I'm so honored to even be part of her story. And I'm honored to be part of anybody's stories here. But I'm so honored, and I'm so proud of you, and I thank you very much for nominating me.
Thank you, Sher and Miss Baker. Sher will be attending IU Indianapolis next year to study biology. Our next student and teacher will be Jackson Hopkins, and he is recognizing Mr. Passwater. If you guys can come up, please. Jackson will be attending Butler University to study biochemistry.
Until 2 years ago, math was one of my least favorite subjects. It wasn't as exciting as watching chemistry take place, or as thought-provoking as picking apart a passage in English. I was just given what seemed like meaningless little puzzles to solve for an hour every day, an actual roadblock preventing me from doing something that was tangible with my time. But this is when Mr. Passwater entered my life. I remember sitting down in his pre-calculus class at the beginning of my junior year. I was talking to my friends and not paying much attention at all, when suddenly he passed out the notes and started teaching class right away. I distinctly remember being surprised. There was no first day of school icebreaker or long introductory slideshow. From the very beginning, I was never bored in his class. Usually, teachers have some sort of rhythm they settle into as the year kicks into full swing. Bell work at the start, followed by some sort of main lesson, a worksheet to go with it, and maybe even homework at the end. Not so in Mr. Passwater's pre-calculus class. His teaching style drew me in and made me excited to walk into his class every day, not knowing what sort of day it would be. On days when new lessons were taught, felt less like another box being checked off a list and more like he was giving us a new tool. Tools that he then had us use in every way he could think of before giving us a new one to play with. Surprisingly, the worksheets we practiced were one of my favorite parts of his classes. I would finish one, proud of the work I'd done, only to be met with yet another set of problems. He said that he had a few rules for when he helped us get through these problems. One I remember well was don't come up to me unless you already have something written down on your paper. A lesson in trying I have used in countless other places to this day. I didn't think I'd have to go up often though, if at all. How wrong I was. I would go to him with what I thought was a solid answer in my paper, again and again and again. And again and again and again, he would send me back to my desk with a, no, go figure it out. This was most certainly an exercise in humility, one that I am grateful for. Despite this failure, I found myself looking forward to every assignment. As I'm sure he and others in my classes with him these past 2 years can attest, I walk in every day asking if we'd get one of these worksheets and hoping the answer would be yes. Thankfully, I am rarely disappointed. Outside of class, I have had several discussions with Mr. Passwater that have changed the way I look at the world. In October of my junior year, I had a question about a worksheet we had done and went to ask him about it right after school. This conversation quickly shifted to other topics and ended up taking so long that my theater director came up to his room to see if I was still alive, as I had missed the entire 6 to 9 o'clock practice. He helped me realize that the real world is full of math, and he was just the one giving us the tools we needed, not just to pass his class, but to make a difference. Both in and out of his class, Mr. Passwater has shown me how humility and openness to new ideas are beneficial, and has, through his teaching, helped me develop these skills and grow as a person. The lessons he taught me about being humble, talking effectively to other people, and problem-solving my way through tricky situations have been every bit as important as the calculus he has taught me. Going into this last year, I felt unprepared and unready for the wide world I am now going to be released into in just a few short weeks. Mr. Passwater, being the great teacher that he is, has put my mind at ease. He has taught me that even if a problem presents itself and seems unsolvable at a first glance, I can try my best again and again until I succeed. Before I go asking for the next one, that is.
So I'm a pretty socially awkward person. I'm going to make this short before I embarrass myself with what I say here. So this is my 5th year at Speedway High School. And I talked to Dr. Trebley, Mr. Disney, and Mr. Claiborne, and Mr. Day almost every week. And I think I've never woke up not excited to come to school. I think I have the best job in the world, and I think it's because I have the best students in the world. This year I'm really fortunate because I look around and I just realized I have every top 10 student in my class this year. And I've had some amazing senior classes come through the school, and this class is unique. They're incredibly bright and talented. They're inquisitive. They're ambitious. But I think the most impressive thing is they're just of the highest character. I've never seen a top 10 class that's so supportive of each other, encouraging, motivating, and they push each other to do better. They're competitors in a good way, teammates, not against each other. And being chosen by Jackson is incredibly humbling, and it's an honor. One of the quotes I like to live by is, to whom much is given, much is required. And for me as a teacher, that motivates me to work hard. I feel like I've been given a huge responsibility for my students to get them ready for what comes after high school. And so I pour everything I have into that. But I also use that in my classroom with my students. And Jackson has been given a lot. He's incredibly talented. He's incredibly inquisitive, hardworking, a great amount of talent and intellectual curiosity. And so I think with Jackson, I hold him to a standard that's higher than any other student I have. The bar for Jackson in my room is almost unattainable. So when he says he comes up with answers and I do send them back, it's because I think I'm tougher on him than I've ever been with a kid, because I know how talented he is, and I know how much I want to push him to do great things. But yet, with all the pushing and all of the bars I set high for him, he has never walked into my room without a smile on his face. He is not kidding when he says every day, Do we get to do a worksheet today? I've never seen someone so giddy and excited about doing math before, besides myself. The highest honor I could give a person is to call them a nerd. And Jackson, you are truly a nerd. And just as evidence, Jackson heard about this competition. If you're interested in doing a 14-hour math competition on a Saturday, just all day, nonstop, this is a real thing, believe it or not. Jackson heard about it. It was like, can we make a team? Can we make a team? And I'm like, if you can find 4 suckers that will join you, we will do it. And they did, and we spent 14 hours on a Saturday doing a competition. I don't think I've ever laughed more on a Saturday doing math with that. But every day Jackson works hard. He's going to change the world. No matter what I throw at him, he never gives up. He's always right until he's wrong. And I love that he knows he's right. He'll argue with you and show you why you're wrong until he realizes at that one moment, oh, you're right, I'm wrong. And then he's immediately quick to admit it and be like, oops, my bad, right? And then he moves on. But I love the fact that he believes in himself, he drives himself, and that he's going to really represent our school well when we go on. So, Jackson, I want to thank you again. It's been an honor to teach you.
Our next student is Madison Smith, who will be attending the University of Mississippi to study accountancy, and she has chosen Speedway Junior High School principal Rick Roseborough.
Bear with me, I'm going to start off by just sharing some numbers with you all. 5, the number of different states I've lived in. 7, the number of times I've moved and the number of schools I've attended. 9, the number of principals I've had. 12, the age I was when I moved to Speedway. 58, the grand total of all of my teachers. 1, the number of people I was allowed to choose who have influenced me the most. Obviously, with all these numbers, it could have been a very daunting task to choose just one person who's made the largest impact on me. But surprisingly, my decision couldn't have been made any easier thanks to the day one feeling I had with Mr. Roseborough. Before I talk about my first encounter with Mr. Roseborough, I want to give you all some perspective as to how my first day at a new school usually tended to go. A tremendous amount of stress would fill my system walking into an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people. At the previous 5 schools I attended before Speedway, I always felt as if I were just a number. Just another student added onto the roster without a second thought. Typically, by the time I got home from my first day, I was drowned in my thoughts by wishing I was at my old school with my old friends and going home to my old house. My mom was always full of reassurance that everything would be okay, but in the back of my brain, I just always hoped I would someday find a place where I felt I belonged. Fast forward to my 8th grade year. Yet again, I was starting at a new school, but this time in Speedway, Indiana. On August 2nd of 2019, I was greeted by a man with an infectious smile and immediately knew I was going to be just fine. Throughout my first day, Mr. Roseborough continuously checked up on me and made sure everything was going smoothly. I never in my life felt so genuinely welcomed. And even though I tend to prefer just fitting in and going with the crowd, Mr. Roseborough made me feel special and happy to finally be noticed. I came home from school that day with a smile on my face, eager to go back the following morning. After just one day at Speedway Junior High School, Mr. Roseborough finally made me feel like I was home. thing is, a lot of people can do what Mr. Roseborough did on my first day. It's not particularly hard to be welcoming and supportive and play the part of a good person on day one. What separated Mr. Roseborough from everybody else is that he gave me that same day one feeling for the rest of my days at Speedway Junior High School. One thing I've learned throughout my years of moving and searching for good friends is that a good person not only impacts yourself, but also everyone else around you. Mr. Roseborough exemplifies this trait in so many different ways. He makes an effort to connect with each and every student, whether that be a nickname or some kind of joke he pulls out of his back pocket. He knows how to make everybody feel special in some type of way. He creates a safe school environment that is enjoyable to walk into. And I can tell you from previous schools I've attended, that isn't always the case. Mr. Roseborough treats his students like they are his own children. With genuine care and concern, he acknowledges our different backgrounds of life and is sure to be understanding when it comes to our lives outside of school. He's created a family-like element within the building he works. Even as kids are coming and going through some of the most awkward teenage phases of life, Mr. Roseborough continues to check in on us when seeing him out and about. He wants nothing more than to see his students succeed in life and become just that much better each and every day. A legacy means creating something enduring while having a lasting impact, which is exactly what Mr. Roseborough has done by teaching me the traits I want to exemplify in both my personal and professional life moving forward. I can only hope in the future that I'll also create a day one feeling for those around me. Thank you, Mr. Roseborough.
Usually I'm not at a loss for words, as a lot of you know, but I'm kind of at a loss for words. When I got the news that I was selected, I was shocked, and I couldn't be more honored than to have Madison pick me, and the kind words that you said mean the world to me. I don't have any teaching stories to share because I didn't teach her in a classroom, but I have some stories. But I just remember, she didn't get to us till her 8th grade year. A shy, polite, nice, quiet young lady from an amazing family. I knew the background of the Smith family, and I knew that she had moved around a lot, and I knew she'd been in a lot of different schools, and it was easy to attach to her and make her feel welcome. She was just that kind of a person. She laughed at my jokes, which that's a plus, because they're pretty bad. And I do remember that she probably thought I was a little bit crazy because she was a really good math student, and if I'm not mistaken, went to the high school for math, and she would have to come back to the junior high, and I would kid her daily about, you have more tardies than anybody in this school. And I think she didn't know how to take that at first. She probably thought, well, he's really counting these tardies. But it was, no, I'm just kidding, but an amazing person, amazing family, and she's going to be an amazing college student at Ole Miss, I hear. But this is just, like I said, I'm at a loss for words. This is an amazing honor, and all I can say is, at the end of each day, I try to leave the kids with a little food for thought, and I end my announcements with, this is Mr. Roseborough, with something to think about. This is Mr. Roseborough. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours. And I can say, Madison, you've made this a great day for me. So all those times I said it to you, this tops all of those. Thank you so much for this honor.
Our next student is Evelyn Luevanos. Evelyn will be attending Purdue University to study mechanical engineering, and with her is Mr. Kurtz, our science teacher.
My laughing partner. In my 4 years at Speedway High School, I have had the privilege and opportunity to meet so many incredible people. I've been given many opportunities by not only this community, but by the teachers. I've been given many opportunities For example, I've been given the opportunity to interview 4 Indy 500 drivers, learn about the motorsports world, computer science, and ultimately decide what my future studies in college will be because of the teachers I had and what the community had to offer me. As a first-generation student who carries her pride in my family morals and our cultural background, I was able to find a community that believed in me more than I could, and a community that was able to push me past my comfort zone. Ultimately, my biggest influence and supporter has been Mr. Kurtz. Before I say many wonderful things about him and how he's impacted my life, I wanted to share the first time my parents, as in my mom and my grandma, met him. It was at the National Honor Society ceremony my junior year. And right after it concluded, my parents asked me, who was that teacher that hugged you? They were touched by Mr. Kurtz's gesture. He hugged me and told me, I'm proud of you. I will never forget when I got home and my abuelita said, that's very sweet of him, he cares for you. My parents' expressions were so sincere and at awe, because they saw not just how much he cared for me, but believed in me as well. Mr. Kurtz never failed to make me laugh with the jokes he made during games, especially the swim meets. His humor and my humor always go hand in hand, and with time, he became my laughing partner. I met Mr. Kurtz my sophomore year. He was my AP biology teacher, and although the course itself was never something of interest to me, he made the class worthwhile and entertaining as best as he could. Throughout the year, he was always there to hear my struggles or anything random that came to my mind, and I always went to him to ask for help. He was always there to guide me as best as he could, and was one of the few people to help me stand up for myself, which is what I oftentimes struggle with to this day still. He motivated me to put myself up to the challenge of various things that I don't think I could have without that extra push from him. These past few months, during swim meets, I would go up to him and ask if I could sit with him, and he always left his spot open for me. He was never bothered by my presence, and the conversations I had with him were always the best. I will never forget such beautiful memories and talks with him. I'm fortunate enough to have had him as my teacher, but most importantly, see him become my best friend, my laughing partner. He always gave me advice and never failed to put a smile on my face. Thank you, Mr. Kurtz, and I truly hope to never lose contact with you. Gracias de parte de mi familia para usted.
Hard to follow that. Probably when we talk about, and let's face it, we're in a new, I tell my kids that every day. I said, we're in a world that you guys are, I envy you and I fear for you all at the same time. We're in a place that these guys just, we've never been before as a culture, as a society. And the one thing that we always try to teach, and in my youth, this is year 30 for me. I know I look a lot younger than that, but in my youth, it was always push, it was always be hard, it was always grind on kids, and we wanted tough kids. And now maybe it's just getting old and senile, but as I've gotten older, I now see that the value, there's strength that we teach kids, and that strength to grab hold and to hold down. And as a coach, say, step on their throat and finish it. There's also strength in a wing beat of a butterfly. And that's why I was so drawn to Evelyn. The fact that she has shown me, I never get emotional, pardon me. She's shown me that strength and helped me to appreciate it. And for that, I will be ever indebted to her. So thank you.
Our next student is Daniela Galvez, who will be attending Purdue University to study biology, and she is recognizing Adam Hurston, a science teacher at Speedway High School.
Lessons learned. During my time as a Speedway student, I've been blessed with many amazing educators, administrators, and coaches. I know I would not be the student and person I am today without the help of so many along the way. So when I learned that I would only be able to honor one person, I knew it would be a challenge to just select one. As time went on, I began to reflect on my time here. I quickly realized that I wanted to honor Mr. Herson as a teacher who has immensely influenced my education. I first met Mr. Herson as a naive freshman when I entered his honors biology class. I soon learned that we did not share the same taste in music and that he liked to use very cheesy videos to help us learn biology. He always kept it real. I also learned how passionate Mr. Herson is about teaching us, not just biology, but about life. Sorry. As a freshman, I learned that Mr. Herson was patient, kind, motivating, and positive. I was only a freshman, but he taught me how to be a high school student throughout the year. Since that time, Mr. Herson has continued to teach me so much about both science and life. Ultimately, he taught me 3 important lessons that I will take with me throughout life. Lesson number 1, Mr. Hurston taught me how to truly push myself academically. As a junior, I decided to take the plunge and take AP Physics. I knew the course would be rigorous, and I was definitely worried about the outcome. But I talked to Mr. Herson about taking on this challenge, and he immediately encouraged me to take the course. He told me that I had what it takes, and that he knew that I could be successful in physics. His belief in me was enough for me to sign up. When the year began, I came face to face with my fears. Failure. The class was definitely challenging, and I struggled quite a bit at the beginning of the year. I remember having to derive equations early in the year, and I could just not seem to understand. I really had no idea what I was doing. Yet, Mr. Herson continued to encourage me, and he patiently reiterated me how to go about it many, many times. It was a years-long process, but it eventually clicked. I was finally able to see my mistakes and understand the larger ideas. I could actually derive an equation. He believed in me, even when I did not, and as a result, I pushed myself further and further than I ever imagined possible. Lesson number 2. Mr. Hurston taught me how to have confidence in myself. During AP Physics, I had many instances of not-so-great test scores. The struggle was real. One day, Mr. Hurston was passing out our test, and I earned a C, the kind of grade that usually led me to cry. But as he was handing me my test, he told me that he had seen so much improvement in me, so much growth. He took notice of how far I had come and all the hard work I had been putting into the class. He didn't just focus on my score. Instead, he chose to celebrate my growth. This experience stuck with me. He helped me understand that a grade does not define me, and that as long as I am improving each day, I have reason to be proud and confident in myself. Even though I struggled and had zero idea how I would ever understand how to derive equations, Mr. Herson had already given me the confidence to believe in myself and trust the process. That confidence kept me motivated, allowing me to conquer those equations. Lesson number 3. Mr. Herson taught me that it is okay to be confused. Mr. Herson has helped me to not fear confusion or the unknown in life. As a student, he has helped me to not get stressed or get overly anxious when I don't immediately understand something we are learning. He showed me that those times of confusion is where the best learning occurs. Rather than running away from the confusion, I now see it as a time I can learn. And each time I learn, I gain a little bit more confidence. Over time, my confidence has built up, and I am able to push myself further and further. I honestly cannot think of a time when I felt more confusion than when we had to derive those equations in physics. Let's be real, those may haunt me for the rest of my life. I may have not embraced the confusion I felt in the beginning, but looking back, I would not trade that confusion and frustration for anything in the world. One thing I do know is that I survived. Thanks to Mr. Herson's encouragement and support, I got through AP Physics and embraced confusion. Outside the classroom, Mr. Hurston has helped me understand that it is okay to be confused in life. It is okay that I won't always know exactly what I want to do with the rest of my life. Mr. Hurston shared with us his dreams of becoming a doctor. He went to school for pre-med starting his journey, but along the way, he realized his purpose was to not be a doctor. He had the courage to change careers, eventually becoming a teacher. His willingness to share his experiences with us and his relatability gives me reassurance with my own life decisions. If he wouldn't have embraced the confusion, the unknown, he wouldn't have made the choice to become an educator, and I wouldn't have the honor and privilege of learning from him. He has given me the foundation I need to reach my goals of becoming a physician's assistant, but more importantly, he has given me the desire to push myself, have confidence in myself, and be okay with myself, even when I'm confused. Mr. Hurston is a teacher I will always remember and be grateful for, even if we never see eye to eye on our music preferences. Thank you, Mr. Hurston.
So, I can be a blubbery mess sometimes when I do these things. It's happened since my first kid, and I've had 3 kids since, 3 kids total, so it gets worse every time, so I had to write down stuff on paper. But I want to start by telling Daniela how much I truly appreciate your invitation tonight. You heard Mrs. Baker say one of the drawbacks of mainly teaching 9th graders is we don't often get invited to the Top Denton dinner. So Daniela, you have truly made my whole school year by inviting me to this today. And that being said, though, one of the benefits of being a freshman teacher is that we do get to see the awesome growth in students, and we get to see you all become young adults over 4 years. We get that unique perspective. Daniela, you are truly remarkable and can do anything you set your mind to. I know. It's the kids. It's the children. I know my classes, biology and AP physics, could sometimes be your most frustrating and difficult classes, especially physics. Tears were shed, but as is the case for many physics students, sometimes tears are shed. But you always met the challenge. You persevered, showing tremendous determination, exceptional desire to learn something really, really difficult. Despite how difficult things would sometimes be, you always came to my class with an infectious, positive smile and attitude in the hallway in my classroom, and you refused to quit. If one day my children decide they want to enroll at Speedway High School, I hope that they find friends and role models just like you. I would love nothing more than for my 10-year-old daughter to someday have a role model like Daniela, to see what women can accomplish athletically, academically, and especially in science. She has chosen to take every science course we have here. Daniela, not only have you left a permanent mark on Speedway High School and this community through your academic and athletic accomplishments, you left a permanent mark on my heart, and I know that whatever path you follow, your caring, helpful, and determined attitude will lead you to success, and you're going to make our world a much better place for me and for my children. Thank you again for choosing me. It's truly an honor. Good luck in all your future adventures.
Our next student is Alexandra Delisle, who will be attending Miami University to study nursing, and she is recognizing Mr. Matt Taylor, high school English teacher here at Speedway.
Third period. I have had a lot of teachers throughout my 13 years at Speedway, but Mr. Taylor is definitely one of the best. 3 reasons that stand out to me. He made the class interesting every day. He was always making jokes and getting people to smile. And he continues to care about me as a person, even though I am no longer his student. Ironically, none of these have anything to do with the subject he taught. However, these qualities are the ones that matter most to me. I liked that Mr. Taylor was always trying to make lessons fun and captivating. Sometimes English class can be monotonous or boring, but he always found creative ways to make it fun. One lesson that I distinctly remember is the tattoo parlor. Mr. Taylor wrote tattoo parlor on the board, and the class had to think about everything we would need to create one. I remember everybody brainstorming and coming up with ideas of what we would need to create a tattoo parlor. In the 5 minutes that he gave us to think, we never ran out of ideas. Looking back, I learned that it takes so much work, effort, and brain power to create something new. That is a lesson I will keep with me and remember while I'm at college and throughout the rest of my life. Another reason that I consider Mr. Taylor to be one of the best teachers is that he was always in a good mood. Even when students acted out, Mr. Taylor would be patient with them. I never once remember him losing his temper with us. I think that when kids like and respect their teachers, they want to perform well for them. Mr. Taylor made it easy to enjoy being his student. Every day, I looked forward to going to his class to hear his next new joke and to learn how to improve my writing. Laughing and learning make for a fun English class. I appreciate you, Mr. Taylor, for pushing me to do both. Something else that I remember Mr. Taylor doing in class was checking up on me and my classmates' lives outside of school. He would be the first to ask how my basketball game went the night before or what another student was doing for their birthday. Mr. Taylor made each one of his students feel special, cared about, and seen. And he continues to do that, even though we're no longer in his class. Walking by Mr. Taylor's classroom and stopping to talk to him, even if it's just for a few seconds, is one of my favorite parts of the day. Mr. Taylor, I miss our third period class. It was filled with some of my favorite memories. I hope you realize the impact you had on me and so many other students who have had the privilege of having you as their teacher. You always made the lessons fun, you made us smile, and you cared about us as people. Thank you for the time, love, energy, and smiles that you put into your job. Someday, when my future children ask me about one of my favorite teachers, I will always say my junior year English teacher, Mr. Taylor.
Well, thanks, Alex. That is that's really nice. It really means a lot to me that you asked me to share this night with you, a special night. Speaking of basketball, last year I went and saw Alex play, watched one of her games, and I was just so impressed by what I saw on the basketball court. And the next day I went up to her and I said, last night was the Alex Delisle show. She was just front and center and in every key moment, every critical part of that game. It was just so impressive. And, that's the way she was in class, too. Every conversation we had, every discussion, every assignment, she was always right there, front and center. Every assignment, every assessment, everything we did, she just worked her heart out. And, despite all that, she's one of those people who just, make you feel good about yourself. She just always had a kind word, something insightful to say, something considerate. She was always so quick to give a compliment, and that was just so nice, and she was just a joy to have in class. And it just means so much that she asked me to be here tonight. As a father, I've got a 12-year-old daughter at home, and she's going to be in high school soon, and I think like most parents, we start thinking, how are her coaches and teachers, going to think about her? And having Alex in my classroom was a good yardstick to have to compare it to. Do her teachers, do her coaches think about her the way I think of Alex? Is she the hardest working person in the room? Is she friendly? Is she approachable? Is she respectful? Is she humble? Alex has all those traits, and it's just my hope that when she's in high school, her teachers feel the same way that I do about Alex, and if she's lucky enough to be in the top 10, that her teacher feels as honored as I do tonight, and if that happens, I think I'll be a very proud father and feel very successful as a parent. So thank you so much, Alex. It just means the world to me. So.
Our next student is Audrey Burrell, who will be attending the Merchant Marine Academy to study computer science. And she is recognizing Lori Burkmeyer, second grade teacher at Wheeler Elementary School.
"10 years ago, I was sitting in Mrs. Berkmeyer's second grade classroom talking to my best friend Daniela. Eventually, we talked so much that Mrs. Berkmeyer moved us so other people could learn. And then we talked some more. We were being moved around the room so much that the only place left where we wouldn't talk was right at her desk. Sitting at her desk, I discovered that Mrs. Berkmeyer was one of my favorite teachers. 10 years later, Mrs. Berkmeyer is still my favorite teacher. It is known at the top 10 dinners that the majority of the teachers that are invited are high school teachers. It takes someone special to have so much of an impact in a person's life that they are remembered 10 years later. Mrs. Berkmeyer is that special teacher. Not only is she amazing at teaching, she has unconditional love for her students. I was one of the many students who was impacted by her generosity, devotion to her class, and the empathy she emitted in the classroom. I remember her classroom being the perfect balance between a strict classroom and a fun classroom. We worked hard, but we also played hard. One of my favorite activities to do when I finished my work, besides talking to Mrs. Berkmeyer, was adding to the puzzle that she kept on the small coffee table in the back of her classroom. It was the little things like this that made her one of my most memorable teachers. I'd have to say that my favorite time spent with Mrs. Berkmeyer was running club. Mrs. Berkmeyer sponsors a club at Wheeler Elementary called Running Club, where we would run around Medwood Park after school. This was one of my favorite clubs during my time at elementary school because Mrs. Berkmeyer and I would run together and talk, and she became a strong mentor in my life. 10 years later, I still see her at my track meets, still cheering me on. I was able to think of many remarkable teachers throughout my academic career, but no teacher came close to my second grade teacher at Wheeler Elementary. Mrs. Berkmeyer made me the strong, talkative, intelligent woman I am today by being the role model that she was in my life. 10 years later, she remains the very same teacher, mentor, and friend I had as a second grade student. I can't imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't walked into Mrs. Berkmeyer's classroom 10 years ago. I surely wouldn't be standing up here today. I don't know where I will be in 10 years from now, but I do know I wouldn't be there without Mrs. Berkmeyer. Thank you, Mrs. Berkmeyer, for being an amazing teacher and the person that you are.
I'm sorry, this is going to be really hard. Those of you who know me, which very few of you do because I teach second grade, know that I'm usually not at a loss for words, but this is such an honor to receive. When you teach someone when they're 7 or 8, you just don't expect them to remember you after all those years. So those of you who talked about teaching freshmen, got nothing on that. So this is such an honor. Thank you so much, Audrey. When I think about Audrey, she is amazing. Those of you who know her and who've taught her know that. The thing that I love about Audrey from the time that she was 7 or 8 to the time that she's to now is Audrey marches to her own beat. And she was this quirky little girl, and she just had a smile on her face all the time. It was like talking to an adult a lot of the times, just as knowledgeable as she was. Was just a joy to be around. She was such a caring little girl, and she's grown up to be a very special, caring young lady now. Like I said, it's an absolute honor, and I am humbled, and I'm not at a loss for words very often. So thank you so much, Audrey, for this recognition tonight, because elementary teachers don't get this very often. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to see what the future brings.
Our next student is Oluwalateo Odubiyi. Her college is currently undecided, but she will study biology and nursing, and she has chosen Jeremy Noren, English teacher at Speedway High School.
What would become of today after tomorrow ended yesterday? This was a question that baffled me for a long time, and the exact line of a poem I wrote in Mr. Noren's class. I have always been a person who worries too much about the future. Enjoying the moments was far from my logic. Before starting my high school education at Speedway High School, I had the same worries. How are things going to be? How are my classes going to be? If I had a class I was apprehensive about, it was English, because it was a class I had some challenges with back in Nigeria. In fact, I worried my English writing skills would not improve in Mr. Noren's class. But all the same, I awaited what the future had in store. I had my first class in America with Mr. Noren my sophomore year. His reception towards me was one of kindness. What I appreciated about Mr. Noren was that he was welcoming and showed sincere happiness and enthusiasm for having me in his class. One thing that struck me was his upbeat attitude. He seemed carefree, enjoying the moment, never once failing to cheer up the students he came across. I was amazed by his attitude and teaching style, which was nothing far from excellent. My fear of not doing well vanished when I quickly adjusted to his class and realized how things worked. In Mr. Noren's class, we were given the autonomy of grading ourselves. Rather than giving us a grade, he had a one-on-one conversation with every student in the class to discuss the assessment. He complimented us on areas we did really well on and gave us advice on areas to work on, taking the time to provide detailed comments on our assessments, both encouraging changes and critiques. The time he dedicated to each student demonstrated how much he cared. He never once left anyone behind and always carried the whole class together. His students and our welfare were his top priorities. His teaching style also made us more independent by allowing us to set our pace in his class. The independent writing gave us more time to delve deeper into topics that we're really interested in. It was during one of these independent writings I discovered my interest in reading and writing poems. What initially started as a way to avoid writing long essays soon led me to discover my love for poetry. While discussing the first ever poem I wrote with Mr. Noren, he gushed at how good the poem was. This only fueled my interest and continuation in writing poetry, and for that I really thank him. Mr. Noren has always been curious about his students' heritage. He always wants to make us feel heard. I remember how he tried to make small talk with us in our native language. He was constantly engaging in questions about my home country. He noticed my love for reading books, and in the quest to make me feel heard and seen, he asked me if I was interested in joining the book club, where I could connect with like-minded students with similar passion for reading, considering I was quiet and only talked a little in his class. When most people think of Mr. Noren, the thing that comes to his mind is how funny and interesting he is. I believe Mr. Noren is so much more than that and has many other great qualities. He's a teacher who pays attention to detail, he's caring, he makes us feel heard, and is attentive. I've never heard a student talk about Mr. Noren without it bringing a smile to their face or lighting up their eyes. From the happy birthday songs he sings in the classroom to offering celery sticks out in the hallway, there was never worry in his class. What was there to worry about when we had a great teacher like Mr. Noren, whose energy killed every trace of worry in our mind? Tomorrow I may not be sure of it, but today I can always do it Mr. Noren's way. Take it one step at a time, have fun, and never miss a chance to be the light to someone else's day.
She really gets me. I'm going to break the mold here and pick up where Mr. Passwater mentioned something. I've had all these students in class too, except Ms. Delisle, and I've had her sister, so we'll just round up. I want to use my time to ask each one why they didn't invite me tonight. Start with Evelyn. All right, just kidding. Telly-Io must have had some really bad teachers, though, for me to be standing here. Some real losers. I'll tell you, she came to my classroom as a new student. Was it first 9 weeks or second 9 weeks? It was pretty early in the school year. And she sat down and started working. And I'm not exaggerating, she didn't stop. I think she's still working right now. She hasn't taken a break since she sat down in my class in 10th grade. She was incredibly impressive. And one of the reasons is her dedication. I never saw this gal waste a second on any extraneous activity. And I don't even know if she has a cell phone because I've never seen it, which is pretty amazing in today's era. This is someone who stays focused every second. And so everything that she gets in life, she deserves, I'll tell you right now. I even saw her helping our custodian one day after school because there was no schoolwork left to do. That's true. She came to my classroom and asked if I needed help with anything, and I said, nope. And then she started working down the hallway just because that's the kind of person she is. And as she mentioned, she writes poetry. And I was bowled over by how good her writing is in my class, and I think she wrote a little bit of everything in my sophomore year class. She wrote nonfiction essays, she wrote short stories, and she wrote poetry. And I'm proud that there's a person in this world that enjoys poetry, and that has something to do with me. That's crazy. It says undecided on her pamphlet. I don't know where she's going to go, and apparently she doesn't either, but I'll tell you, no matter where she ends up, she's going to find success. And I guess I should start crying, so let's just do that. And no matter which college she ends up in, it's going to be a better place because she's there. And thank you, Telly-Io, for choosing me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Our next student is Paige Powell, who will be attending the University of Southern Indiana to study occupational therapy, and she has chosen J.D. Clampett, coach at Speedway High School.
When I was 8 years old, my parents put me in softball. I had participated in a number of activities ranging from basketball and soccer to Girl Scouts and even Irish dance. I had never truly found my favorite of all of those activities, though, until I ended up on a coach-pitched softball team called the Sycamores, coached by Coach Clampett. Despite being able to hit the ball only inches in front of the plate, I had never had more fun than when I played on this team. I would genuinely look forward to each practice and each game, and the reason for that love was because of Coach Clampett. He is the most kind, loving, and caring coach I've ever had. He makes his players feel wanted and gives them the confidence they need to believe they can achieve or become great because he truly believes in each and every one of his players. His leadership in my life has shaped me into who I am today, and I would not be in the position I am today as an athlete or a student if it wasn't for Coach Clampett. Fast forward to freshman year, I was able to have Coach Clampett as a basketball coach. At the time, I was definitely a stereotypical freshman player. I was very timid, very scared, and very much afraid of messing up. High school was obviously very new to me, and I realized it was not going to be just me and the girls I've been playing with since Little League anymore. There were new people, new coaches, and new responsibilities, and I was at the bottom of the food chain, thrown into the lion's den. However, in the midst of my fear came a familiar face. I remember I was shooting at the farthest basket I could be from everyone, just trying to blend in, and Coach Clampett came up to me. He approached me and said he remembered me from Little League. He asked me how I was and started to joke around with me. This conversation may have not looked like anything major, but this conversation had a huge impact on me. It made me forget that I was new and had no idea what I was doing, and made me feel confident that I could overcome my fears because I knew Coach Clampett would be in my corner. Confidence for me is something I had lacked throughout my life. In school or in sports, I have always questioned whether I was smart enough or talented enough to accomplish the athletic goals I had for myself. However, Coach Clampett helped me overcome those emotions by telling me how much he believed in me. He saw how hard I worked and reminded me of how great I actually was at the things I doubted I was even good at. Just him believing in me gave me the motivation to work harder in the classroom and on the court. Today I know Coach Clampett as my softball coach. Clampett says girls softball is one of his favorite sports to coach. And while I can't fact check that completely, I can at least say that softball season is my favorite sports season. I have really enjoyed playing softball over the years, and I love the girls I play with. However, the amount I care about this sport has been my downfall in some situations. Every mistake, every bad hit, I took to heart. I remember one game, I was just not feeling myself. I had hit the ball, but got out 2 at-bats in a row, and being my own worst enemy, I started to bring myself down. Suddenly, I felt Coach Clampett pulling me aside, telling me to walk with him. He walked with me all the way to the fence and back, and reminded me of how much I have grown as a player, how hard I have worked to get to where I was, and how great of a hitter I was on the team. This situation is just one example of why I love Coach. He brought me out of my negative state and reminded me that my mistakes don't define me. His words of encouragement have helped me in more situations than just that day. When I'm struggling with a topic at school or just feel like I don't have the energy to keep going, I think of what Coach Clampett said to me, and I am motivated to have a stronger work ethic and drive to succeed. Thank you, Coach, for being the best coach I could ever ask for. Thank you for being there for me, for always believing in me, and pushing me to become the best version of myself every single day. I can't thank him enough for all he has done for me. Also, thank you for letting Haley, Reagan, and I scream pitch-perfect songs in your car before games. It really makes us play better.
I'm like everybody else. I'm not somebody that's lost for words. I've talked in front of 70 men in football. I've talked in front of 30 girls at basketball games. There's a lot I can say about Paige. Her hard work, what kind of person she is, from where she's came from the 8-year-old girl that I remember coach pitching to the softball player she is. She's one of our leaders on the softball team. She does everything right. That goes for the classroom, that goes in the community, that goes in her everyday life. I just can't say enough about her. I am truly honored to do this, to being a coach, doing the job that I do. I do what I do for the kids, for this community. It means the world to me, and she means the world to me, and she's a prime example of what this community stands for. So I thank you. I'm very honored, and the sky's the limit for you, Paige. Thank you so much.
Our next student is Yosan Tekle, who will be attending either IU Indy or IU Bloomington to study biochemistry. And she has chosen Mr. Ryan Dunphy, Speedway High School computer science teacher.
What a ride. There are moments in life that leaves us searching for words, unable to fully express the impact someone has on our journey. Tonight, I want to take a moment to share just how much Mr. Dunphy has influenced my life. On my first day of school, being new to Speedway, my first class period was computer science principles, where I sat alone, excluded from the other students. And what stands out vividly about that day is Mr. Dunphy's presence besides me, reassuring and guiding me through the course. Mr. Dunphy's support began day one and remains to this day. He extends his assistance not only with academics, but also with various matters, whether relating to school or not. Beyond completing assignments in his class, our conversations span diverse topics such as technology, forensics, anatomy, and medicine. Mr. Dunphy offers truthful insights whenever I seek guidance, and aiding with my schoolwork, he goes beyond simply providing answers, opting instead to explain the reasoning behind correct responses and the flaws in incorrect ones. During my sophomore year, even before I began to think of my journey to college, Mr. Dunphy gave me an opportunity to intern and learn about computer science at a summer program. He continues to provide me with opportunities for summer programs, internships, and research programs that can help prepare me for college. Mr. Dunphy is one of the most direct people I've ever met. Everything we talk about, he's honest and thoughtful. When we talk about colleges, he gives me answers that may not be what I want to hear, but what I need to hear. His advice has helped me weigh my college choices thoughtfully and carefully. Mr. Dunphy is always optimistic, a good listener, and open-minded person. Whenever we start a new topic in CSA, he patiently listens to me grumble about Java, but it's not just about his class. He's there for me when I whine about other classes and worry about my grades. Every few months, I tell him I might fail a class, and he always tells me not to worry, that everything will be okay. He boosts my confidence and helps me see the bright side. Aside from academics, Mr. Dunphy has a good sense of humor and a free spirit. One of his favorite activities are riding roller coasters. He has urged for me to give them a try, but I've concluded that I do not want to ride a roller coaster. Aside from roller coasters, he hopes to go bungee jumping, skydiving, and so much more. The other day, I was hoping to find one dangerous activity that he wouldn't try, and I learned that out of 20 dangerous activities, there were only 2 he wouldn't consider: bull running and volcano boarding. One other thing Mr. Dunphy does is obsess about ducks. In the beginning of computer science class, we each get a duck. Mr. Dunphy explains that talking to the duck can help us find mistakes in our code. I know the ducks don't actually talk, but having something to talk to makes it easier for me to spot errors in my code. Hard to believe something this simple helps me so much. Despite our differences about roller coasters, Mr. Dunphy's dedication to my growth, both academically and personally, is something I'll always cherish. I'm eternally grateful for all the opportunities, advice, and wisdom I've gained from you. I thank you for being one of the most influential people in my life.
Okay, so I have to explain. Her seat was away from everybody else because we still had COVID rules. All of the computers had to be 6 feet apart, and that was the only spot left. But once she got an opportunity, she quickly latched on to another next to Cepha, and then the 2 of them started talking, and then it became a lot easier because they could translate to each other. And once I realized that was happening, it was like, okay, I have less work to do. And the ducks, there's a story behind it. You can look it up about rubber duck programming. It is just the idea that if you have someone to talk it out, you can work through a lot of things on your own. That's really all it is. I tell them that they're special for each student. They sort of are. But thank you for choosing me for this honor.
After hearing from each of these students and teachers, I believe it's apparent why Speedway High School continues to be recognized for outstanding academic performance. The quality of the speeches were impressive, but the character of these students and the commitment to learning that these teachers make and fulfill daily is both unique and exceptional. Every individual honored here tonight, including the parents, teachers, students, have contributed to making this school a better place, and for that, I thank each of you.